You are beautiful. You were a good dream. You are a shining star in a cold, dark nighttime world. I discovered that Desert Senna has a much lower, smaller, shorter window of opportunity for harvest than I realized, because I hadn't really tried to harvest Desert Senna before. Speaking of which, your Palo Verde has about a month of a window for harvesting. And in my case, I fill this pouch, which is, it's a common pouch for tactical, for a water bottle that goes with tactical gear. You can find it anywhere they sell that. And that pouch, when full, after I crack open the pods, the beans will be enough to fill a container like this. And then all I have to do really from that point is bag it up and freeze it if I want to keep it for a while. So it looks like the size of a good side dish. Although remember that it's got a high protein content, so side dish, well, it'll be a very filling side dish. If you don't eat too much, then that side dish might be a full meal. Anyway, so I came out here to gather up some more Palo Verde, but meanwhile, all this Desert Senna, the pods are all splitting open. And so maybe there's a couple weeks in there realistically to harvest Senna. Max, maybe less than that. So I've got an idea. Oh, but first I should qualify that about the Palo Verde being about a month window for harvest. And that would be the early harvest, the green harvest. Because there's also the late harvest after they've dried out. So, it's just two different ways of eating it. But also, if you're not embarrassed to go harvest city landscaping, they plant those Palo Verde trees all over Phoenix, all over the valley. So you have a much wider window of opportunity for harvest of the city landscaping Palo Verde, because they water it all the time. Whereas these trees that are growing out in the desert or in empty lots, they only get whatever water comes naturally, which is rare. The seeds are falling out of the open pods onto the plates while I'm picking the closed pods. What I found out is that if I pick them closed, and they're not too unripe yet, they will dry and open themselves up while they're drying, like on a plate or whatever in a container. In the meantime, of course, if I'm picking these closed pods, then the open ones that still have something in them, they're going to be knocking seeds out. So these seeds that are sitting in that plate are just there because of the plate sitting under these bushes and the wind's blowing. So the wind knocks whatever seeds are loose from the open pods onto the plate. When the other little things get into the mix that aren't really seeds, you know, it's just chaff, and it could be winnowed out. I can see these all have seeds in them. They're just opening up. You can see the seeds right inside there, so I'm going to figure out a way to get those. Ah, look at all those seeds underneath there. What I think I've learned about desert senna so far is that seems like the best time to pick them is when they're just beginning to split open at the top. And I should have started doing this at least a week ago if I really wanted to make the best of the harvest. So there, like everything else, there's early bloomers and there's late bloomers, and there's still some stuff that's not ripe yet. So there's time, but I'm looking at the majority of these pods have already opened up and lost most of their seeds. And every time a gust of wind comes through, more come out. You know, if you walk through the desert senna right now, it sounds like rattlesnakes. All the seeds that are just not just shaking inside the pods, but falling out of them. And for reference, it is right now May 29th, 2014. Looks like now is when the early harvest for mesquite begins. And by early harvest, what I mean is when you can start eating them green, like we were doing with the Palo Verde. And it depends. Now this is, yes, this is velvet mesquite right here behind me. And you see there's a little pea in there. Great for a Sasquatch, maybe not so good if you wanted to harvest, you know, to open the pods and eat the peas, you know, like you would with sweet peas, because it's a lot more of a challenge. So, but, you know, again, you can go through just as a Sasquatch. Whoops, I'm dropping good peas. There's a outer skin, there's an inner skin in there, or well, what would be inner flesh, we'll call it, that has kind of a lemon lime type taste, and then a very thin shell that goes around the pea, which is the biggest pain in the butt when you're trying to open these up, is that thin shell. But I split off kind of the backbone, you know, spine of the pod, used my fingernails to open it up, and then boom, there's a pea inside. Now, if you are having a tough time, because each tree is going to be a little different, thank you. If you were having a tough time getting to that because that little thin shell, it's not a hard shell like a walnut, it's a very flexible shell. You can bite it to open it up and hypothetically use your teeth to get the pea out, and then you'll get some of that lemon lime taste kind of too. There we go. The outer husk isn't very sweet, but it's also not bitter like the Palo Verde husk is. So it doesn't really matter. I showed you before a couple times where I just chewed the whole thing, including the pod. And it depends on the tree. It depends on how, you know, how well it chews up and stuff. But there you go. You could go. And again, each species of mesquite you may find to be a little different. Some will be easier to open up, some will be harder, you know, some may not be worth your time. There's a lot of velvet mesquite right here around the Phoenix area, which is in the lower Sonoran life zone. If you're walking along and you see something like this laying on the ground, a Sasquatch may have been through there. Now, Palo Verde pods like this are a lot less work, a lot more food, a lot less work, so they're a better choice if you have them available. But this is the very end of May. You try to eat them right now, they're very solid. They're not as as soft and tasty, whoops, I'm losing it, as they were, you know, earlier at the beginning of the month. So, but there's still, everywhere there's still good food right now. They're just beginning to dry out. So if you leave the desert senna just sitting in an open container to dry, the pods will just split open by themselves as they dry. You can't have it in a closed container because I discovered the pods will just stay kind of mushy and soft. So open container where the air gets to them, they just dry out and they begin to split. And when they split, of course, a lot of the seeds fall out naturally and just go into the bottom of the container. That's why you want them in something, or it could be on a plate too, but in something that'll catch the seeds. And the rest of them, you just give them a little help and, you know, knock the seeds out, open up the pods, put the seeds in a container. So some of these seeds look kind of gray. So the question I have for myself is that mold? Okay, well, I've got a pile of clean seeds, and what fell to the bottom of that container when I was putting the senna in there. So that's going to be winnowed, and then I've got the greener senna pods that I'm not going to use yet. If they're green but they're willing to open up without too much trouble, then they're soft inside. They have about the texture of raisins, but not the taste. It's kind of a bland taste, not sweet for sure. But anyway, now for the winnowing. Now, if I was smarter than a big talking monkey, I'd probably just pick all the desert senna, put it in a big tub with an open top, let it all open itself up, put a lid on it, shake it up, and take the lid off, wait longer so that more pods open up, put the lid on, shake it all up again. Do this for, I don't know, until it's clear that every single pod in there has opened up. Then remove the pods and winnow what's at the bottom, and there would be almost no work. Okay, the next experiment with desert senna, I'm going to see what these seeds do if I soak them overnight. You know, the way you would beans that are dried. So the senna seeds have been sitting in water for, just about 24 hours now. So now I want to boil it, or let it simmer for a while and see how it turns out. I should also point out that the water has turned kind of yellow a little bit, which makes me think of acorns. You know how you leach the tannins out of acorns and the water turns yellow, although with acorns it turns a much darker yellow. So this has turned a very light yellow. So there's something like that that's been leached out of it, and that may be what's making the seeds, they vary in taste. Some of them are almost sweet, some of them are almost bitter, so there may be something like a tannic acid in there that's been leached out by having the beans sit. But anyway, I think I'm just going to simmer these in the water that I've leached them in. I've noticed too that there are some of these that have settled at the bottom that don't appear to have swelled at all. Well, here goes. Pray for me. The texture is awesome. The seeds that puffed up, perfect. Now, here's what I did. I let that simmer. Okay, after it had been soaking for almost 24 hours, I let it simmer for about an hour. Now, there are some seeds, remember those that were at the bottom that didn't quite, they never puffed up. It's like the water didn't even affect them. There are some of those that are still crunchy. So, but they're not so bad you can't chew them, right? So they're just crunchy. The others, I mean, this texture is really, really edible, very palatable. Now there's a slight bitter flavor, but if you look at how yellow this water is, this is what it simmered in. That is stuff, maybe tannic acid, that was leached out of it during the simmering process. Remember, I used the water that I had soaked it in, and it was a little yellow. This is dark yellow, so this looks like the kind of water that you get when you're leaching the tannic acid out of acorns. And these seeds are only slightly bitter. Really, if you leached that flavor out of them, they wouldn't be bitter at all. So, wow, I mean, here's something else. That wasn't a whole lot of seeds that I used for this experiment. But after they puffed up from the whole process, it's a good little side dish. So with that, just that small amount, you saw how much it was, right? After I eat this, and it doesn't have the medicinal effect that the pods and the leaves do, and so the experiment then is successful. After that happens, I'm going to go on to grinding the seeds into flour. One more thing to take note of, you can see that some of these are yellow, some of them are black, dark colored. So again, at whatever stage I collected these at, the good seeds that puffed up are good. The black ones, the yellow ones, they're all good. I have another interesting observation. As that yellow stuff, I dumped this out, but of course there's some still in the bottom of the container. And as it evaporates, discovered that it's an oil. I've actually gotten the oil out of these seeds, and that's what seems to have been leached out of them is oil leached out into the water. Alright, so the Desert Senna experiment with boiling senna, like beans, I consider to have been successful. So there was no effect from eating those that would be any symptom of having eaten something poisonous. The seeds did not have the medicinal value that the tea from the leaves and the pods would have. And so everything was good as far as I'm concerned. Now I'm going to move on to grinding them into flour. And you can see there's a lot of different color ranging from green to brown to black in there. Yellow is pretty common. I've also removed things that I consider bad seeds. There you go. You can see that they're kind of gray, and I'm assuming that's mold or mildew or some kind of a fungus. So we don't need fungusy, moldy seeds interfering with the experiment and making you sick, making me sick. I'm looking for stones I can use as metate and mono, because I want to be able to grind seeds and mesquite pods and whatever, and I don't particularly want to use one that's over 400 years old, that's already shaped. So I'm looking for a rock that would be almost flat on both sides, and the texture should be rough, both for the metate and the mono, because I want to be able to grip the seeds of the pods between both rocks so that they don't slide around when you're trying to grind, right? So you want the rocks to grip the seeds of the pods, and preferably something that's not too porous, with big old holes in it that catch all the flour or whatever, right? So this is my mission that hopefully I'll accomplish before the sun goes down. Most of the Palo Verde beans are getting a bit too dry to be eaten raw. It's June 8th, and we're at the end of the early Palo Verde harvest season. There is still some Palo Verde beans that are good to be eaten raw, but we're moving into that period where you're going to start harvesting dried pods to gather the beans for long-term storage, summer and winter storage. One of these might be my mono. I don't know. I'll have to try them and see. It's kind of a small metate, but it might work. If I can find a bigger one, I'll use it. But if I can't, then I'll take this. I can always get a bigger one later when I accidentally run across one. But you know how it is. The likelihood of me running across one that's not 10 miles away from my car is pretty good. Or wait, it's pretty bad. It's pretty unlikely. Wait, yeah, whatever. And then there's this. It's a little hefty. I'm seeing a lot of perfect rocks with perfect texture that are just too small. See, this is what I'm saying. This texture right here is perfect. It's rough. It'll grip the seeds, but it's too small. All right, I'm gonna break in my new metate sets. So you'll notice that they don't have the shapes that you see when you recognize something as a metate. So they have to be broken in. It's like buying brand new work boots or something and having to break them in. Now, your great grandparents and great uncles and aunts and cousins and so forth, many, many generations back, would oftentimes put down a hide, first of all, underneath the metate, like a buffalo hide, a deer hide, something like that, to catch everything that comes off the metate, so that you can just kind of, fold it up and, pour out all the contents of the hide after you're done. In this case, I don't need to use a hide, but you could use a tarp. You could use one of those plastic bags that has, all those multiple uses that I built a tent out of and whatever. I think I'll go with the trash bag idea. Okay. and I don't ruin a good tarp. I have a whole bunch of options for a mono. I was considering that maybe this will be kind of cool. I don't know. I'm going to pick something that fits your hands and is easy to work with. Alright, I'm going to see what happens to the Senna seeds.
See all the hurting people fighting for their lives. I wanna maybe
so far this little one is gripping the seeds best. It's kind of like I thought when I was out picking these. It's like if you find something that's really a rough texture with miniature pores, you know, very small pores, like it's a volcanic rock, but not big pores, right? It really grips these little seeds and grinds them well. Even though this one maybe isn't as comfortable to hold, it crushes the seeds and powderizes them better.
see all the hurting people singing as therapy. There's nothing wrong with acting like you're so happy when you sing our songs and choose the way that we will feel. And so we heal, and it's real if you sing and can't believe in what you say. Go away. If that is what I hear only noise. If that is all I hear only noise. If that is all I hear only noise.
I'm going to try this in a pan, just because if you were out in the wilderness and didn't have an oven or anything, you could hypothetically make a clay pot, right? So I'm going to use a pan. I'm going to use a little bit of olive oil in the bottom of the pan. Sweet. Turned it over inside the olive oil so it's on both sides. Now I'm going to put a lid on there and cook it at low heat and see what happens. I already know the dough is bitter, so sweet. Okay, here's the test. All right. This may look about as good as dog poo, but I'll bet it doesn't taste half as good. So yeah, this is some of the most bitter, nasty stuff I've ever tasted in my life. But when I boiled the seeds, it wasn't bad at all. So here's what I've learned. Desert Senna has to be leached, just like any of the other nuts or beans or legumes that have to be leached before they can be eaten. Same thing with Desert Senna. If you grind up the seeds, they're too bitter. If you soak it in water and dump the water, then it's less bitter. So you may want to do the same thing you would with acorns. You know, leave it in water, dump the water, have it in water overnight, dump it. Do that several times. You might even want to add salt. You can do it in salt water or salted water, and that would be your best result. Not ground up unless you leached it first, and then could make a dough out of the leached seeds. So anyway, I'm gonna quit this nonsense for now, just so I can edit this and get it online, and you can see what else I've been working on.
But every name's as good as another, or we'll call it Big Brother.